a lot stronger, and I think he's going to have better endurance. Not being able to boil himself down like that, and even though it is a huge jump, I think we lose sight of the fact of how much he had to boil down and how gaunt he looked at 140.
So obvious, I guess, because Crawford is bigger.
Right.
Crawford is heavy, you know, like he carries himself, you know, he's very solid right now. He's taller, you know, when you've seen the face off. So he is technically bigger.
Hello, I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, okay, so let me look at this from Canelo's perspective and the experience of being in the ring with guys that are long and fast. What we've seen come from Canelo is the patience. Something that I know from my own personal experience, a guy that shows a lot of patience and you don't bother him by winning rounds. I don't think Canelo's going to get bothered.
To Canelo Alvarez as he discusses the looming threat of Terence Crawford. Ward stresses that Father Time may be creeping up on Canelo in subtle ways, with a slightly lower punch output and reflexes that aren't as sharp as before. Yet he acknowledges that Canelo remains better than most fighters in the world today. Ward insists Canelo's skills and craftiness are still elite, but facing Crawford is different. He compares Canelo's recent approach to a preseason scrimmage, saying the real test comes when Crawford's precision, power, and adaptability enter the ring.
In my case, but I'm really not moving up in weight. I'm just not having to boil myself down. So I think that Terence is going to be a lot stronger, and I think he's going to have better endurance. Not being able to boil himself down like that, and even though it is a huge jump, I think we lose sight of the fact of how much he had to boil down and how gaunt he looked at 140, and even quickly at 147. It got to the point where you start to cut into muscle mass. If you know anything about weight loss, at a certain point, that affects you in a boxing ring. Boxing, maybe wrestling, and MMA are the only sports where you have to tear yourself down for two months or 3 months, not just the training, but the weight loss. And then you have less than or right around 24 hours to put it back on, and then you need to go be great the next night. Everybody else gets to play or compete at their walking around weight or their playing weight. So I think that's going to favor Terence Crawford is not having to boil down 25 or 20. It's probably going to be about 10 to 12.
What do you make of the state of Canelo right now? Because it does seem like he's received a little bit of heat, and I think the last performance, it was somewhat warranted because like the output was historically low. But to me, I felt like he knew. I mean, Terence was sitting there in the front row in Riyadh. Like, why would you even put yourself in risk when you've got this gigantic fight waiting for you? Like, just get the win over Skull, move on, get the belts, and you get the big fight. So how much do you chalk it up to, like, you know, the motivation just isn't there because the opponents aren't on his level, or maybe he's just getting older and, as you know, Father Time is undefeated?
Great question. I think a couple of things are true. I think number one, I think Father Time is catching up to Canelo, but it's subtle. A little less punch output than normal. Maybe the reflexes have weaned just a little bit, but he's still better than most fighters in the world today.
Believes Canelo Alvarez holds the advantage over Terence Crawford, not just because of size, but due to experience and skill. Mendoza stresses that, although Crawford is extremely talented and has proven himself against elite competition, the significance of weight classes cannot be ignored. In his view, Canelo's long career at higher divisions provides him with a natural comfort level at 168 pounds, which Crawford cannot easily replicate. He acknowledges Crawford's greatness, but ultimately leans toward Canelo, emphasizing that the Mexican superstar's ring IQ, championship pedigree, and history against larger opponents position him favorably in this matchup.
We gonna finish this thing strong. Gonna get Brian Mendoza's perspective of what you think about this fight with Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford.
It's so, like, I feel like every day I'm almost kind of changing my opinion, but at the end of the day, I lean towards Canelo because of the size.
Yeah.
But I know the size thing isn't so, like, so obvious, I guess, because Crawford is bigger.
Right.
Crawford is heavy, you know, like he carries himself, you know, he's very solid right now. He's taller, you know, when you've seen the face off. So he is technically bigger. It's just the size it's very different when you carry that weight in the ring. That's what you got to worry about performing with. And, you know, just based off kind of like the performance at 154, although it was against a very solid fighter with Madrimov, I don't know if he's gonna be solid enough. Just used to carrying that type of weight around at 68. So that's the reason I lean towards Canelo. But the skill-wise, everything else is obviously still more on Bud's side.
Yeah.
So that's where my toss-up is. I just lean towards Canelo because at the end of the day, you got to respect the weight classes.
We've been real heavy on this fight. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now. And I feel like every time I've spoken about Canelo and Crawford, the only thing I'm talking about is Crawford. So I said, you know what, today I'm going to flip the script. Today it's all about Canelo for me. And I might break your heart in the process. But I got to keep it real. You're right. This is a 50-50 fight. This is a fight where, as I was telling the Uber driver this morning, these guys, we've seen them both make mistakes in the ring. But they've never cost them, right? This is the first fight that I believe they both have are going to get in the ring where the small mistake is actually a big mistake against the opposer.
By defeating Manny Pacquiao in 2017, delivers a strong warning to Canelo Alvarez about the dangers of facing Terence Crawford. Horn acknowledges that Canelo's power, size, and experience could give him an edge in the early stages of the fight. He predicts that Canelo may push forward aggressively and look to impose his physical strength, which could put Crawford on the back foot at first. However, Horn stresses that Crawford is a fighter who thrives on adjustments. Once Crawford settles into the rhythm, he becomes extremely difficult to stop. Horn points out that Crawford's timing, precision, and ability to switch styles mid-fight make him one of the most dangerous finishers in the sport today. If Canelo fails to close the show early, Horn believes the later rounds will swing heavily in Crawford's favor. He argues that Crawford's stamina, counterpunching skills, and calmness under pressure will eventually overwhelm the Mexican star. Horn openly sides with Crawford, saying that while Canelo might control the opening rounds, Crawford's ability to break down opponents systematically makes him the likely victor if the fight goes the distance.
I favor Canelo. Not by a lot, but I do favor him. I just think that, I think the Skull fight was just a bad style. And I think Canelo was like, why force the issue? You know what I mean? I'm up. This guy's running. I'm not gonna take a chance. So I think that it was that kind of fight for Canelo. But Marjamal did give Crawford problems. You know what I'm saying? And where I felt like, damn, at 54, he gave you problems. 68 is different. You know what I'm saying? So you going up 3 weight classes, because he was 47, 54, 60, 68, that's 3 weight classes. It's a major difference, man. And one thing is like, right, so people are saying Canelo has problems with movers. But the reality is Crawford's not a mover. Crawford's not a fighter that fights on his feet in the sense of boxing, kind of like, let's say, how a Pernell Whitaker would box or how Landy Lara would box. Crawford is a fighter that works on angles. He's not on his feet like Muhammad Ali. You know what I'm saying? He's not that kind of boxer. So he's going to be there to get hit, And I feel like that favors Canelo, because Canelo's going to hit you in the arms. He's going to hit you in the elbows. He's going to hit anything you give him. He's going to take it. You know what I mean? And now, is Crawford just going to switch his style and become a mover, moving up 3 weight classes? So now you're going to put all that weight on your legs, and you never boxed like that before. How can you do that